5 mistakes that ruin every poker player's win rate in no particular order. Let's jump right into them. Number 1. Overvaluing a hand that was premium pre-flop but isn't on the river, like in this example.
So here low jack raises to 2.5, we have pocket kings in the small blind, definitely 3-betting this, but here already a small mistake by Hero. He only went to 4x, and note that we are 173 big blinds deep, so I would definitely make this about 13 if not even 14 big blinds at this stack depth, but not a massive mistake, although low jack is now incentivized to call with a wider range because we made it so small and they have position. 9-10 jack is actually a better flop than it might look like for us because we have 9s, 10s, jacks, we have overpairs, we might have jack 10 suited, and we can have flush draws with ace king, ace queen, and so on. That said, we don't have a lot of hands that want to go for 3 streets of value here. We are very deep, we are out of position, so we should actually start with a check here. Now, in reality, I don't mind betting, but if we bet, we have to bet a bit smaller here, so already going half pot is a bit tricky here, but I don't think it's still the end of the world just yet, because a lot of players would still call here with second best hand, so just about okay, but I still think a check would have been much better. Villain calls, and now the flush completes here. We do of course have the king of spades, which is great, but at this point I would really slow it down, because if we bet again here we are almost turning our hand into a bluff, but even that will hardly work because we won't really get anything better to fold, and I doubt that we will get anything worse to call either, so I don't really see a point in betting. If we bet, then at least make it very small, which Hero does here, quarter pot, but I still think I would have just gone for the check here, and we get called again. And now on this river, it is kind of a blank, but also not, because pocket eights, if they called so far, they have gotten there. So we now really have to consider what we are beating. Yes, we beat something like ace jack, king jack, and maybe an ace 10 that is very stubborn, or a king 10 that is very stubborn, but note that we block some of those. So there is not a lot that we beat here at this point, and that's why I would just check again, and Hero misses this opportunity for the third time, and not only that, but this time he goes really big. So I don't know, is this supposed to be a bluff here with the king of spades? I don't think he meant it as a bluff, especially because of what's going to come, but I just don't know what he was hoping to get called by. And then this happens. Villain just jams, he goes all in. So at this point we have nothing but a bluff catcher. We basically don't beat anything else than ace of spades X. And now you tell me what that X is, because I can't see a lot of things there, because if it's a queen, he has a straight. If he has a jack or a 10, which he shouldn't even really have, but then he might not turn these into a bluff at the end here. So maybe ace king with the ace of spades, but that is absolutely the only hand that I could see here. And then he would have to turn it into a bluff and risk his entire stack of 173 big blinds here and 142 on the river to take this one away. So I can absolutely not see a bluff here on this river with this sort of action. Yet our villain can't let go of his overpair because he's got an overpair. He calls and he sees the bad news here in the disguise of a flush.
Number 2, and this is quite common even for somewhat more advanced players, and that is continuation betting too much in spots where a check would be better.
So here we have a raise to 3x from the cutoff, button calls, and we have ace queen suited in the small blind, definitely going to squeeze here. Size is also fine, I'm totally on board with this. We get called by both the cutoff and the button. The flop comes king jack 6, we have a gut shot, a backdoor flush draw, and one overcard, and yes, we have the range advantage, yes, we have the nut advantage, so in theory we can continuation bet here. However, we are also up against two players who have position on us, so just keep in mind, if you start betting here, you better be prepared to barrel this one off even if you don't hit, because I don't think you will get a lot of folds here. Even pocket sevens might call you here by one of the players, and definitely a king or a jack or some sort of a draw will call you, and I just don't really like the c-bet here, although I don't think it's terrible. It's quite close, but I would have just started with a check. We get called only by the button, and now we turn this queen, which is great for our hand. For our range it's quite okay too, and now we have picked up some showdown value. The only play, in my opinion, here is now to check. So what on earth are we accomplishing by betting again here? Are we going to get any better hand to fold? Well, I doubt that a set or two pair will fold, and I even doubt that a king will fold here. Can we get any weaker hands to call? Well, I also doubt it. Like maybe ace jack of some sort, maybe pocket tens, but he shouldn't have either of those hands really on the button there. So if he has a hand like nines or eights or something like that that called the flop, then why bet again now? Because we won't get him to call with such a hand unless he's an absolute calling station or we have the image of a maniac. So I really don't like this hand here, betting with the middle of our range, and now I don't like this either, to see that we get jammed on, and this one is a snap fold, and Hero at least found this fold here. So I don't know what villain had, might have been two pair or pocket sixes or something like that, but that's exactly the reason why bet on this turn. We could have check called here, and then we would still have had the chance to improve to the nuts, or then if we faced a bet on the river we would have folded. But I absolutely don't like this middling bet here on the turn.
And number 3, and this is one of my favorite ones, the polarization mistake. So players bet with the middle of the range in spots where they will basically only get called by better hands, and they fold out pretty much all weaker hands.
We already talked about polarization mistakes in the previous hand, but this one is even more obvious here because it starts on the flop. So we have a limp here under the gun, we have another limp under the gun +1, we have ace-4 suited here. We could just limp behind, but I'm okay with raising here, but I'm not okay with the size. So this was a live game here. If I had played it, I would have gone to something like 15 for the minimum here, possibly 17 or 18. I know Hero wrote that this was a table full of nits, but if they are nits, then you still have to go big, because what you want actually is fold here. If you can get a hand like a6 to fold here, that would be great, and you're happy with any folds here, so just go bigger, because here all you'll do is sweeten the pot. You'll go multi-way to a pot here. You might not even be in position, because that's exactly what happens here. The button calls, okay, blinds go out of the way, the under the gun limper calls, and now for whatever reason, I just don't understand it, under the gun +1 limped and then folded to this small raise here. I just don't understand what some people do. But anyway, we go to this flop with three-way, and it's not the worst flop in the world for us. We have top pair, albeit not a great kicker, and we have the nut flush draw. So what do? We bet. No, why? What are we getting called by that we beat? Yes, potentially a jack or a 9 might call, but they might call later as well. And a flush draw, yes, but we block that to death here with our two hearts. So I really don't understand why we bet here, and we even bet almost half pot. I would have just checked here. We have good showdown value and we're drawing to the nuts. If it hadn't been the ace there, then I can understand that we would want to bet here, because it would be a bluff, and it's a semi-bluff because we're drawing to the nuts. But here we have showdown value. Just check, guys. Don't bet here. Button folds and we get called by the original limper. Now the 9 pairs the board here, the limper checks again, and at least here hero managed to find a check behind. I do like this because the 9 definitely favors him, and if we bet again here, I don't know what we get called by. And here the king on the river, and he bets 44 into 58. Now this is the player who limped under the gun, so that probably suggests that he is a rather passive player. And now he wakes up on this river with a pretty big bet. What is this, like 2/3, 3/4 pot here? So I don't understand why our hero just snap called here because he has top pair. But look at this here. What bluffs does our opponent have here? Well, he could have a flush draw, but we block that to some extent. Okay, the ace is not that relevant because he might not bluff with the ace of hearts here. So, okay, he could have some sort of a flush draw, like 5-6 suited, 6-7 suited, 7-8 suited or so. But notice those are not many combinations because there's only one 7-8 of hearts, only one 6-7 of hearts, and so on. And then look at all the value combos that he could have. He could have a 9, he could have a good ace, he could even have ace king if he's a passive player here, and despite the limp under the gun. He could have any sort of a 9, he could even have a house here with jack 9 or ace 9 or king 9 or something like that. So there is really a lot of value in there, and combine that with the fact that he is a rather passive player who might not even bluff off all of his missed draws here. Oh, and the one combo, the value combo I forgot, is queen 10 as well, that he might have called the flop with and that just got there with a straight. So we call and we see exactly that queen 10 that I almost forgot to mention, and we learned a lesson here. But for me, this is a, if not a snap fold, then a quick fold as soon as I go through my bluff catching matrix.
Number 4 mistake that ruins your win rate: not thinking enough about villain's range. Like in this example, where hero calls off a triple barrel in an under-bluffed spot.
Here cutoff raises to 2.5x. We have king queen suited in the big blind. We can raise, we can call, I don't mind. In this case, hero calls, happy with that. Jack 8 deuce, we have a couple of back doors, we check, and he now bets half pot. Now if he bets a bit smaller, I think we can check raise here, we can check call. If he bets that big, all 3 options are on the table, but I just think there's not much wrong with folding here if we don't have a lot of information. But I'm okay with calling just about. Just think and consider that you won't make a lot of money with this call, but it's not the worst call I've ever seen. So fine, we now turn the queen here, top pair, good kicker, excellent, we check, he now bets pretty big again, and I know that hero asked whether he should check raise here. Well, if we check raise here, what are we gonna get called by that barreled twice here and is worse than ours for value? Yeah, maybe a queen 10, but I don't even think a queen 10 would bet that big here on this turn, but maybe, and that would be the only hand that I could imagine, because we lose against 9-10, we lose against aces, kings, queens, jacks, 8s, deuces, queen jack, jack 8 suited if he has something like that, and we beat all the bluffs, so no reason at all to raise here. Hero did only call, so that's fine. And now on this river, the backdoor flush comes in, and apart from that, not much else. So we check again, and now we face this big bet on the river as well. So here villain went for the triple barrel here, and we have top pair and a good kicker. Now in theory, if villain finds enough bluffs here, then I'm happy with this call, and I think solver would call here because we have a good hand, and that's pretty much the top of the range here almost, apart from a hand like pocket deuces or 2 pair. However, does villain at these stakes, and this is 10 NL, does a villain really triple barrel with absolute air? I just strongly doubt it, and I don't really see what bluffs he could have other than really just a complete bluff, like, yeah, okay, maybe ace-king takes such a line, but you wouldn't even have to do it, and most players wouldn't. So I just don't see what bluffs he has here, whereas he has a lot of value combinations. Now you might say, wouldn't he slow down when the flush comes in? And yes, that is a valid point. However, it is the backdoor flush, and if I were him and I had an overpair or two pair or something like that, I would also go for value here, and then I would just bet fold if I get check raised on this river. So yeah, you could consider turning your top pair into a bluff here, but even then I'm not sure he would fold a hand like aces or kings, or he might have pocket jacks or something like that. So I think this is just a fold on the river. Instead, hero calls and cutoff shows up with aces. Because he has the ace of hearts, it makes even more sense for him to barrel this river and get called by worse, because he knows that we can't have the nut flush. So I think he played it very well, whereas hero should probably have found the fold on the flop and then definitely on the river.
And finally, mistake number 5, missing perfect bluff opportunities, like in this example.
This might be a confusing hand for many players, and it is for me to some extent as well, so that's why it's important to go over it. Here we have a player raising to 5x and under the gun +1. He's tagged as a lag who just pretty much opens every hand, and because of that I'm totally on board with this 3-bet with ace-jack suited, 3-betting for value here. And now this happens, and this happens quite a bit in live poker. We get a cold call in the small blind. And this is something that you would hardly ever see in GTO, and is usually only done by weak passive players, and they can have all sorts of hands there. I've seen this done with aces and kings, but mostly like queens, jacks, tens, maybe nines, eights, something like king queen suited, ace queen, but it can even be pocket deuces, and sometimes is 9-8 suited. So it can really be a whole bunch of hands. So just keep that in mind for the rest of the hand. Big blind folds, and surprisingly the lag folds as well. So we go heads up to this flop here, 10-5-4 rainbow. He checks, and we can check here. Okay, I don't mind this, but with a range that we just mentioned, yeah, he might have pocket jacks or pocket queens, and obviously he won't fold those. He might have pocket tens. It's unlikely that he has fives or fours, but if he has nines or eights, we could barrel him off with 2 barrels here. And if he has a hand like ace queen or king queen, we actually don't mind him folding those hands out now. We just take the pot down, but I'm okay with just checking here behind if we think that he is too pocket pair heavy. So okay, now the deuce here improves our hand a little bit, because we now have a gut shot to a straight. He checks again, and we check behind, and I'm okay at this point. I think we have ace high, we can draw to a straight, we still could get to a pair here with an ace or a jack if he has a hand like 8s or 9s or something like that, so that is okay. But now we basically get the card that gets us out of jail here. The offsuit king is perfect for our range and terrible for his range. Now, I'm not saying that he would fold any pocket pair here. However, a lot of recreational players will put you on ace king if you 3-bet pre-flop and then you don't bet at all on the flop and on the turn. So now this is your chance to bet big, and even a half pot will probably get you there. But definitely if you make this 125, 145, something like that, I think the fold equity goes through the roof, because he has showed so much weakness. I just don't think he has a big hand, and he will most likely fold some pair. Not if you make it 50 or 75 or so, but if you make this half pot or even 2/3, 3/4, I'm pretty sure that you have very good fold equity. Instead, hero misses the opportunity. He checks behind, and the small blind shows up with pocket nines and wins this hand.
There are of course a lot more mistakes and we're going to cover them in future videos. But in the meantime, watch this video here to learn how to bluff catch successfully.